Welcome you all for the 13th Annual RAJ Anand Intellectual Property Moot Court Competition 2013. We request you all to please stand to attention and join our voices to sing the national anthem. Jaitley to kindly light the lamp. Towards the cause of protecting intellectual property and promoting innovation. The heart and mind must work in harmony to translate into fruitful pursuits. If it challenges as well as liberates you, each obstacle that you overcome results in a sense of joy and fulfillment. The Moot Court competition is one of our endeavors to promote this. It is our pleasure once again to host the 13th Annual RAJ Anand Intellectual Property Moot Court Competition 2013 in association with the Premier Institute of Legal Studies, Symbiosis Law School, Noida. We are truly honored to commence the competition in the esteemed presence of Mr. Arun Jaitley, whose wealth of experience and knowledge will not only make each student learn, but also instill the determination to deliver their very best. We thank you, sir, for being here. Next on our panel, here is our beloved founding partner, Mr. N.K. Anand. His pioneering work in intellectual property law, synergized with his inherent humility, has earned him immense respect. Mr. N.K. Anand's tales of legal battles still echo in the corridors of Anand and Anand. Thank you, sir, for gracing this occasion. Now we welcome Mr. Praveen Anand, our managing partner. He is the source of our ever-growing knowledge and as well as the reservoir of our creative energies. A true role model and an inspiration for each one of us. Welcome, sir. Dr. Chandrasekhar Ravandle is the director of Symbiosis Law School, Noida, who is a renowned and highly respected educationalist. Mr. Ravandle's contribution has been instrumental in shaping the future of thousands of students. Thank you, sir, for your generous support. I would now like to invite our managing partner, Mr. Praveen Anand, to deliver the welcome address.
Mr. Arun Jaitley, sir, Dr. Ravandle, Mr. N.K. Anand, respected judges of the Moot Court competition, senior members of the bar, my colleagues at Anand and Anand, and dear students. Before we start today, I'd like to mention that in the month of August, we lost a very dear friend, Professor Temtan Daruwala, who was also a distinguished intellectual property lawyer practicing before the Bombay High Court, and a professor of law who had taught for a very large number of years, upwards of, I think, 40. And as a mark of respect to Professor Daruwala, may I request each one of you to stand up for a 1 minute silence. Thank you. Welcome to the 13th RAJ Anand Moot Court competition. Year after year, I have stood here and spoken to you about Mr. RAJ Anand and how he inspired all of us. I've spoken about intellectual property and about certain inspirational themes. This year is special because we've turned 90 years. I will not follow the usual format of what I have been doing all these years, but we have taken the liberty of adding a section after Mr. Jaitley's inaugural, which will essentially comprise three subsections. First, a little section about the firm. Second, about the moot court competition over the years. And third, about our 90-year celebrations, which will comprise several projects and several events throughout the year. And this will be at the end of the inaugural section. As a firm, we have been very conscious about timing, and each one of you who will practice or do practice patent law will know that even a single day's delay can sometimes kill your case. So we are extremely conscious about timing, and that is why I have requested all my colleagues who will speak in the inaugural session to be very brief, and I hope that that thought will continue throughout the moot court with all these students as well. We have received welcome messages from a large number of well-wishers and friends and clients all over the world. I cannot mention more than 3, so I will just mention those 3 clients who play a very important and crucial role before the Indian courts in respect of the volume of litigation and also the vast contribution that their cases have made to the jurisprudence of this country. First, a message from the Tatas, a very warm message. I know you can't read it back there. The second message was from Microsoft. Again, very personalized, very warm, and written by none other than Keshav Dhakar, who was a part of us for many, many years as a partner of the firm.
Good evening, councillors. This is Roy Walden from Pfizer, congratulating you at Anand and Anand on your 90th anniversary.
Pfizer. Although a very large number of individuals, lawyers, engineers, and staff have contributed to the success of our firm, those who are with us and those who are not with us at the moment have all greatly contributed, and I take this opportunity to express my gratitude and the firm's gratitude to each one of them. Over the years, we have established great bonds with Mr. Arun Jaitley. He has been our senior in a large number of cases before the High Court and before the Supreme Court. And above all, he has been a well-wisher and a friend. I will now request Mr. Jaitley to say a few words and to inaugurate the competition.
Mr. N.K. Anand, Dr. Ranwade, Mr. Praveen Anand, and friends, Let me, at the very outset, express my gratitude to Praveen for requesting me to come for a few minutes and associate with the 13th Raj Anand Memorial Moot Court. The firm Anand and Anand, he mentioned, is in the 90th year. I, of course, have had a very close association with the briefs of the firm in the past when I was practicing. But more important than that, I've also had a little personal association with the Anands. This is the 90th year of their firm, and I have never made a secret out of this to the Anands, for whom I have great fondness, that Mr. N.K. Anand always continues to be on the top of my affection chart. And I'm sure when the centenary is celebrated, he and some of us will all be here to be participating in that. I wish you all the best, sir. I have in the last 40 years seen the firm grow. Set up at a time where there was a relatively lesser relevance of intellectual property. When I joined the bar, a lot of us thought that intellectual property at best was identified with the trademark law. There were 2-3 lawyers, Mr. N.K. Anand was one of them. The late Sardar Anup Singh was the conventional opponent he used to have. And there were very few lawyers who were dealing in it. And all we thought was that intellectual property is only about trademark law. And trademark law was also essentially about names and not the various expanded parameters of the law. At times it was interjected by copyright, which was mainly publications, books, a little bit of cinema, a little bit of music. And then we saw all kinds of expansions taking place. And expansions came, the width of arguments increased, and we almost succeeded in bringing our law and its evolution at par with the international parameters and standards. I remember when I used to be negotiating the later part of TRIPS in the WTO for the government of India, one of the favorite arguments of the European Union and the United States used to be that your IPR parameters are not internationally compatible. This was a traditional argument. But by that time, we had reached a situation where we were internationally most compatible. Now, even though in a parrot-like manner it was repeated, we had evolved to a situation that when we asked them to point out the specifics, they found it extremely difficult to pinpoint the specifics where we were lacking. I think, Praveen, you were fortunate enough to be based in Delhi or centered out of Delhi, because if there was one court which benefited the most in terms of knowledge and which enabled the evolution of these parameters and also expanded into broader concepts of other IPR regimes, be it designs, be it patents or otherwise, I think Delhi became a clear hub of it. And now we can see other cities and towns and high courts where there is a lot more economic activity also becoming important centers. It's almost linked to the extent of economic activity in those centers. And I see over the years to come, as economy expands, the last 2 decades post-liberalization, the expansion has been monumental. And it's almost linked to the liberalization of the economy and the awareness of your own identity, of your own research, of your own inventions, which Indian industry and Indian entrepreneurs now have. And they probably need the best advice and the best representation to deal with it. Most of you are young law students. I think it's for you to decide how your careers shape up. I do hope some of you, like the professor, also evolve into academics, because laws become so lucrative otherwise that the best are not going into academics. And therefore finding law teachers has been extremely difficult. But with national law schools and some other private law institutions of excellence coming up, I think there's a huge, huge need for law academics in this country. Elsewhere in the world, you have some of the best minds in the universities getting into academics, which has been somewhat lacking in India. And I do hope with the working conditions there becoming a lot more acceptable, this tendency would increase. The number of lawyers are going to increase, the number of law students are going to increase, the litigation is going to increase, advisory capacities are going to increase. And since the best minds are going to get into legal education, those who train them, I think also need to be measuring up to the requirements of the society as it's needed today. People are getting into advisory work, people are getting into corporate sector, and people are getting into litigation. Just a word of suggestion, if not advice. I've always wondered, I'm no longer a lawyer now, or at least I'm temporarily absent. And I've always wondered what are the best assets a lawyer can have. What are the best qualities that he can have? Some say it's his arguing ability, some say it's his analytical mind. I think you require many, but the foremost quality of any lawyer has to be credibility. You may be the most brilliant mind, but if your word can't be trusted, your colleagues won't trust you, your clients won't trust you, the court won't trust you. If there's a lawyer who lacks credibility, he's quite capable of arousing a suspicion and even losing a good case. But if a lawyer has great credibility and he states a point of fact, courts even don't open the file to look at that page because they accept what falls from him. And therefore, it's always better to lose a case than lose your credibility. If you lose your credibility, you will lose many other cases. People won't engage you. And therefore, there is no shortcuts to success. And this is for law students to really drill in themselves. You'll have to climb the stairs. But once you learn how to climb the stairs, you will suddenly realize that there may be a lot of crowding at the bottom in the legal profession. But there is a huge, huge amount of space on the top. And once you have a good potential, you have credibility, you have climbed all the steps, you avoided temptations of sharp practices, the ability to reach on the top, the space would always be there to welcome you. You obviously need a lot of industry and hard work to be put in. There's nothing casual about law. I've always believed from my own days, law is a very difficult examination to fail in because it's a very easy course to study. It's an interesting course to study. But it's a very challenging, difficult profession. I remember in the good old days, you could work in between the exams, reading out of small books and even pass the exams of law. Now it's become a little more complicated. But once you get into the profession, that's not the road. Or even if you're a legal executive. You need to read every line, you need to have an analytical mind, you need to research, you must have all your propositions ready. And I think a great ability of a legal mind has to be how to include the relevant and exclude the irrelevant. Because a lot of material that will come before you may be very tempting. There may be nice judgments to quote, there may be nice propositions, there will be good turn of phrases. So you can be trapped by them to use them. And at least you think you can create an impact on their basis, but they may be wholly redundant to the key point on your case. Therefore, your ability to absolve the relevant, and a lawyer's analytical mind must immediately include the relevant and exclude the irrelevant. And that is how, that's the difference between brevity and filibustering. Because once you start filibustering, you lose the attention of whichever audience you have, including your colleagues, the court, the judge. And once you create that level of disinterest, then you've lost half the battle. You, of course, need an analytical mind. You need extensive research, and now the instruments of research have become relatively easier. You don't have to sit through 300 books and then research out of them. The aids to research have become much easier. And of course, I always believe a lawyer must have probably one of the best memories going. If you have to look at papers and shuffle through books, every time you are asked a question, you'll always find it getting trapped into boredom and losing the attention and the concentration of those who are supposed to listen to you. So you should be able to immediately remember from what happened in a matter that you argued 24 years ago and scull out a proposition out of that. You must, of course, polish up your language. And I do believe that elsewhere in the world, the power of language has been strengthening. Merely because your longish, prolonged arguments, they don't add to your substance. Sharp, focused sentences with brevity. In my other hat that I wear, I always realize that the art of turning phrases and your ability to turn phrases and scull out good one-liners, their impact may be much more than an hour-long speech. And therefore, a lawyer, when he creates the propositions and presents those propositions, they must be so framed in a language in which it's almost akin to a packaging exercise where the formulation of the proposition itself attracts attention. And I think moot courts are a great opportunity for training yourself from that. A moot court is not a fictional exercise. It's an aspirational exercise. It's an aspirational exercise where you imagine, and that's why you are all expected to wear clothes which resemble a lawyer's clothes. And that you've already graduated at the bar and you are arguing a case seriously. And therefore you put yourself in those shoes and argue with the same kind of conviction that a lawyer is arguing. And I think it's a great training ground We didn't have, I don't think, Praveen, we had moot courts when we were studying. We used to have debates, which I'm sure must be still there in the colleges, but the law institutions have graduated into this whole concept of moot courts in the last 20 years. And I think it's a great exercise. And just a final word about Mr. Raj Anand. I had the privilege of knowing him. He was a lovely man. Mostly confined himself to chamber and registry and advisory work. Mr. N.K. Anand used to come to court. And of course, we used to have a lot of social interaction with him. My tributes to his memory. He is no longer with us, but I have lovely memories of him, also of moments which I mentioned to Praveen, which I can't publicly share. And I'm sure this moot court will continue to grow. And Mr. N.K. Anand must be a very proud father, because really the great leap has come when Praveen has taken this hands-on approach, and I'm sure the firm will grow, the moot court will grow, and so will intellectual property. My best wishes to all of you.
Now, I would like to call Ms. Archana Shankar, a senior partner at Anand and Anand, one of the most loved personalities at Anand and Anand. Please.
A very good morning to everybody, and a very, very warm welcome. I'm actually very choked at this moment, because this is straight from my heart. Before I begin, I have only 1 minute, but I kind of bribed Tanvi to say, give me 5 minutes for this speech. I'm sorry, I'm going to take somebody's time here. Can I welcome each and everybody here and request Safir, Debjeet, and Binny first to come and unveil a small tribute that the patent department has given to the firm on their 90th year of celebration. And it's a collage that our engineers in the patent team made. As Mr. Bhatnagar just said, that Anand and Anand is a true amalgamation of lawyers and patent engineers. Binny, you can... We've just kind of blown some portions of the collage. And just some few emotional moments. I know I have a lot to say, but I'm going to try and really be very, very short. I've been associated with Anand and Anand for the last 20 years, and I think I've been one of the most fortunate professionals to have trained under the country's best IP gurus. Thank you, Mr. N.K. Anand, Mr. Praveen Anand, and Mr. Shanti Kumar. I really don't know how to describe my association with or about Anand and Anand, but I've penned down a few lines, or maybe just one line, and I would like to say as follows. Anand and Anand is a place that has a heart and soul, with the best. I said I can get choked. Okay, I'm not going to say anything. With the best IP minds in the country, I can't. I'm so sorry. And I'm really going to cut this short. And I told Ms. Anand, I just can't speak on a stage and all these things. I'd like to thank everybody at Anand and Anand for being with me all this while and make this journey of mine so memorable. Thank you, N.K. Anand, for blessing me all the time. God bless. I can't. I'm going to make it very short. Thank you, my patent team, and a very, very big hug to each and everybody. Thank you, Neeti, Vidisha, Anandita, Geeta, Hemlata, everybody, Jagbandhu and Cyril. On this day, I remember Shimona a lot. Gaurav, who's not with us anymore. I can't do this. I'm going to call upon Stuti and Drishi to take over because we've tried to put a small surprise together, and I would request Mr. Arun Jaitley, Mr. N. K. Anand, Dr. Ravanle, and Mr. Anand to unveil this surprise. And while Mr. Arun Jaitley unveils his surprise, I'm going to request Stuti to, she's been kind enough to pen down a few words and take us through this journey.
Super.
It's a coffee table book. Stuti, would you just take us?
Yes, ma'am. Starting.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Arjuna.
I think we can show this. We can just. I'd like to thank Drishi and Stuti for putting their heart and soul and converting this dream of mine into a coffee table book. Thank you, Tanvi and Geetika, for keeping this secret under wraps. Thank you, my patentee. I don't think anybody in the patent team knew about it except Drishi, Geetika, and Stuti. And from the whole firm, only Tanvi. I mean, from the litigation team, it was only Tanvi. I would like to thank everybody here for joining us in our 90-year celebration. And I hope all the young students and lawyers all the best in the journey ahead of them. Thank you. Can I request Stuti to just say, she's penned down a poem, There Are Times. And I would request Stuti to just say the poem.
Thanks, ma'am. There are times when we shout, Eureka, Eureka, expressing tears of triumph on a discovery, or are overwhelmed with extreme exhilaration on stumbling across a masterpiece. And then there are times we realize that there is needed a proclivity not just in the creativity that is spawned or the ingenuity cracking at the dawn, but in something beyond. There is a creativity needed to fortify that creativity, and certain ingenuity needed to safeguard that ingenuity, and not just an ordinary appetite, as the masses would exhibit, but a certain dexterity to develop that grid, which has, for 90 years, impacted the game of intellectual property. Today, we revere the spirit that has propelled us at the altar of solemn and festivity, as we continue to carve a niche of our own as an ingrained penchant to rise above from the debris of banality. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.